I'd like to call the June 18th Board of Commissioners meeting to order. Thank you all for coming tonight. Our first order of business is the invocation by our County Manager, Mr. David Cotton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come before you and conduct the business of Onslow County. Please bless all those who have gathered here this evening. Lord, be with the commissioners tonight in their deliberations and grant them wisdom and guidance as they address the items on tonight's agenda. Lord, during these months of summer, guide our steps and strengthen our hearts. Grant us refreshment of mind and body. May our community be a place of joy, peace, and safety. Let all the joys of summer remind us of your goodness. Father, we pray for the men and women in our armed forces who serve our country with tremendous courage, commitment, and sacrifice. May all we do this day bring you honor and glory. We will continue to thank you and praise you for the blessings you have bestowed upon us. Now, with deep respect and reverence for the faiths, beliefs, and traditions of those gathered here tonight, hear us in a moment of silence. Amen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Pledge allegiance by Deputy County Manager, Ms. Sharon Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to recognize a few of the elected officials here tonight. Ms. Lisa Brown, our clerk of Superior Court. Thank you, Ms. Brown, for being here. Sheriff Hans Miller, Sheriff of Onslow County, and Ms. Pam Thomas, Chairman of the Onslow County Board of Education. I hope I didn't miss anyone. We ask that all in attendance please set your cell phones to silent or vibrate mode. The board offers the public two opportunities to speak during the meeting. Comments during the first public comment period should be limited to 3 minutes each and must be directly issue-oriented with the agenda items for this meeting. The second public comment period is at the end of the meeting, and it may be on any issue upon the Board of Commissioners has control. During the second public comment period, citizens can address the board for up to 5 minutes each. Citizen speakers will be acknowledged in the order in which they signed up to speak and will address all comments to the board as a whole and not to individual commissioners. Speakers will address the board from the speaker's podium up front of the room and will begin their remarks by stating their name and address. Discussion between speakers and members of the audience will not be allowed. Public comment is not intended to require the board to answer any impromptu questions. Speakers are expected to be civil in their language and presentation. Any comments where the primary purpose is to promote a business or candidacy shall not be allowed. In accordance with the board's adopted rules of procedures, commissioners shall reserve responses, if any, at the commissioner comment period on the agenda. With no other items being considered separately, a motion to adopt the agenda is in order, and I'd like to...
Mr. Chairman?
Okay.
I make the motion to amend the agenda to include item 2I, Fish Strong Foundation July 4th fireworks display pyrotechnic permit, and item 2J, proposed holiday schedule for fiscal year 18-19.
Second.
Okay, second. All in favor of the agenda as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion to adopt the meeting agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Approval of the items on the consent agenda. Is anything on the consent agenda that any board member would like to have removed and placed at the end of the meeting for detailed discussion? If not, I will call for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor,
Aye.
signify by saying aye. We'll move on now to item 3. Mr. Cotton, has anyone signed up for the first public comment section?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
This is the first public comment period. In accordance with the board's adopted rules of procedures, commissioners shall reserve responses, if any, for the commissioner comment period on the agenda. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes each and must be directly issue-oriented with the agenda items for this meeting. The first person who has signed up is Mr. Al Burgess of P.O. Box 615, Jacksonville, North Carolina.
Greetings, commissioners and fellow citizens. My name is Al Burgess, and items 6 and 3 are the agenda items that caused me to give public comments. Although I realize that you're going to hold a public hearing about item 3, I cannot talk about one aforementioned item without mentioning the other, because one seems to be the most fair and equitable solution to our budgetary problem. First and foremost, both in the public and the social media, the current dialogue and rhetoric being exchanged is disappointing. Within both of them, we find radio personalities, party officials, and elected leaders playing the blame game regarding the proposed budget, which includes blaming the Board of Education for our county's budgetary issues. As stated in the agenda, our county's service demands and responsibilities increase as the population grows. Consequently, adjustments have to be made in order to accommodate the construction needs of citizens and children while meeting statewide mandates. Our legislature has reduced classroom size, which in turn has caused us to construct more educational facilities for the citizens in a rapidly growing county. Rather than taking shots at another board for socio-political variables beyond their control, members of our Board of Commissioners should support and accept the proposed budget in the same way that at least 3 of the commissioners on this current board have supported and accepted budgetary requests from the Sheriff's Office. I keep hearing the word transparency being thrown around quite a bit regarding the Board of Education's budget as if no one can see it, when in fact you can find the budget online and anyone can attend the budget workshops to offer input. In any case, it is my hope that the current board does not entertain political shenanigans and sensationalism of local radio show commentators and political figures that is being propagated for the sole purpose of propelling political campaigns rather than protecting the interests of our citizens and the future of our children. I humbly ask the board to approve the board and support the sales tax resolution found in item 6 to mitigate our current budgetary issue. Thank you.
The next person who has signed up is Mr. Jim Husky of 514 Edwards Road.
Good evening. Thank you for letting us speak. Mine's going to be short and sweet. I have never, I guess everyone here knows me when I come up here, I've never been for a tax increase on property. I've always wanted to go another direction. But we've come down to, I guess the hard knocks of what's been happening up to this point. And the state of North Carolina has put something on us that we can't afford. So we're going to have to go for a way to pay for it. I understand all that. But I'm still not sure about the property tax thing. But I don't think, and I will say this, I don't think it is too much to ask on $200,000. Individual has $200,000 worth of property, they would have an increase of $60 a year or $5 a month. That's what it would cost me the time I get home for gas, come over here and talk. I didn't like that, the tax bit, but I do understand what you're going through, and I appreciate your hard work on it. I would also like you to keep in mind that we've got these people out there that hasn't paid their taxes. And I know you're doing what you can so far to take care of that problem. I understand there's about 400 people getting their property under foreclosure each month. That's a lot of people and a lot of court cases. I'm not even sure if you broke it down to what they owe, vice what it costs us to sue them or put them under foreclosure, that we'd even come close to getting our money back. but we have to do something to make sure people do pay their taxes. I think that the businesses, especially the people, the contractors and all who do work in the area, if they owe taxes and they're still working in Jacksonville, they should be mandated to pay their taxes before they can get another permit. I think that'd be one way that you could help. There's a lot of different ways I've already talked to some of the members on the board about, but I know that this is a problem, but I do thank you for your time. I hope we can come to a reasonable resolution. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, no one else has signed up.
Okay. All right, we'll move on with the three, which is presentations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Amateur Radio Week.
Yes, sir. Proclamation. I'll read it into the record. State of North Carolina, County of Onslow. Proclamation, Amateur Radio Week, June 18th through the 24th of 2018. Whereas amateur radio operators are celebrating over a century of the miracle of the human voice broadcast over the airwaves. And the Onslow Amateur Radio Club will celebrate its 50th year as the local coordination group for local radio amateurs. And whereas amateur radio has continued to use communication and technology to provide a bridge between people, societies, and countries by creating friendships and the sharing of ideas. And whereas amateur radio operators have also provided countless hours of community services, both in emergencies and to other local organizations throughout these decades, and whereas government agencies also recognize the services provided to our many emergency response organizations, and whereas Onslow County recognizes and appreciates the diligence of these hams who also serve as weather spotters in the National Weather Service Skywarn program, providing crucial information during dangerous weather events. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Onslow County Board of Commissioners declares the week of June 18th through June 24th, 2018, Amateur Radio Week, in honor of the men and women whose skills and public service keep our community and citizens safe. Presented this 18th day of June, 2018. The chairman will present the proclamation, and I would ask that the amateur radio representatives approach the flags, please.
Thank you, sir. I can present this to you, Mr. Sheriff. Just don't know how valuable the amateur radio organization is. Communication is the key to any kind of disaster. It's the key to any type of emergency situation. And a lot of times when all the power goes out, the ham radio guys are up and running and they communicating and they talking. And
We will be there.
we appreciate what you do. I can give you an opportunity to speak if you like.
I'll leave it to you.
We do want to present you with one of our shirts. Our Onslow County Amateur Radio shirt on the back says our call sign NC4OC and 73 says good luck, goodbye, and farewell.
Well, thank you. I'll wear that with pride.
Put Jack's age on it.
Hey, Chairman, I didn't think they put your age on the back of that shirt.
I don't believe I caught that.
I can't believe they put the age of your age on the back of that shirt.
Oh, let me see.
73? Is that close?
That's close. Okay, we'll move on now with item 5, public hearing, and I'll turn it over to our county manager for a presentation.
All right. Chairman Bright, Vice Chairman Knapp, Commissioner Bennett, Commissioner Buchanan, Commissioner Price. On behalf of all county staff, the department, agencies, and office directors, as well as the budget team who were integrally involved in the preparation and development of the budget, I want to say thank you on their behalf for allowing me, as your budget officer, to make tonight's presentation. Want to provide a brief overview of what I will be covering before opening the public hearing. First will be the budget process. I want to discuss the Commissioner's guidance and direction, as well as discuss the mandates, our revenue projections, as well as expenditure requests, and then close out with specific budget overview details. All North Carolina counties are guided in establishing the framework for our budgets through North Carolina General Statute 159.7, which is commonly known as the Local Government Budget and Fiscal Control Act. What makes the fiscal year 2018-2019 unique is that we in addition have a revaluation to factor in to all of the other variables that we have to consider. The statute does require that every county consider and go through a revaluation process at least once every 8 years. Onslow County has established a 4-year revaluation cycle. Next, the Commissioner Goal Setting Workshop. We did identify, commissioners identified 6 specific goals, and I will go through each one of those in detail a little bit later in the presentation. That information that was culminated and developed at the workshop was disseminated to all of the department, office, and agency directors, which allowed them to then go and develop their individual budgets. So internally, all of our 26 departments, offices, and agencies developed and submitted a 3-part budget. It was in overall operational needs, capital improvements based on an annual recurring, and then personnel. Our outside funded agencies follow a couple of different tracks. But for the nonprofits, specifically the occupancy tax, we have a well-established and embedded application process that we use. Of course, the school system, Onslow County School System, and the Coastal Carolina Community College follow general statute guidelines and submit those budgets in a timely fashion every year without fail. The budget team met individually with all of our internal department offices and agency representatives to review their requests in detail. Following that, the budget team, my budget team, and I took a line item review and analysis, and we did line item adjustments. And in some instances, we actually went into the individual line items and did transactional adjustments. So it wasn't just a line item review, it was those individual requests that build that line item dollar amount that was vetted and adjusted. And some were actually adjusted up because things were not accounted for necessarily based on the latest available data. Now, the commissioner's role in that. Of course, as you know, and this is more for the community, the commissioners are constantly involved. Once the budget is adopted, that's just step one. Throughout the process, throughout the fiscal year, it is constantly being reviewed and adjusted through budget amendments, through further guidance from the commissioners. It could be as simple as an update and as complex as a workshop to develop resolutions to address an unforeseen expenditure that we may have. More specifically, for the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget proposal, we started the formal process with the goal-setting retreat earlier in this calendar year, where, again, 6 specific goals were identified by the body. Between the goal-setting retreat and the budget proposal workshop, we did have individual detailed review meetings, myself and each individual commissioner, discussing what the proposal was. And at the budget proposal workshop, of course, received further guidance from the commissioners on specific expenditures to better match the budget proposal with the guidance and direction of the commissioners, which brings us to tonight. We're obviously at the public hearing, and once I finish with my presentation, I'll open the public hearing. And depending on the wishes of the commissioners, we could have another workshop based on the feedback that you receive here. You may decide to hold another workshop, and we have built that into the schedule because the budget adoption does have to occur by June 30th of 2018, June 30th of each year. We have to adopt a balanced budget, so we still have time. So as I alluded to, the commissioner's goals. Maintain the current funding formula. That is, in everything that I will talk about this evening, and of course there is a caveat, everything that's discussed, I will say that we met each one of the commissioner's goals for the operational budget. Once you factor in the, and this is fact, this is not supposition, the operational budget is balanced based on a tax rate of 67.5 cents per $100 valuation. The schools at Dixon and Catherine Lake, the elementary schools, will be new debt. So we need a revenue to satisfy that debt. And we have worked with our finance department and determined that tax rate or that amount of money is equal to 3 cents on the tax rate. All right, maintain the funding partnership with the Onslow County Facility-Based Crisis Center. The funding is identified in the budget. It is roughly $500,000 from the ABC revenues, not general fund tax dollars. Continue to evaluate funding and external programs. The commissioners did discuss that at length at our last workshop, not skipping over, but emergency services, public safety, I will cover that more in depth in a few other slides. And then, of course, monitoring salaries and maintaining competitiveness with market rates. And with the recommended cost of living adjustment of 2.3, I would say that we have met that benchmark that the commissioners set for us. Mandates. Each county in North Carolina is saddled with anywhere from 79 to 81%. It falls out around 80% of all counties' budgets are tied to mandates. And within those mandates, there are 2 types. There are mandated programs with funding mandates, meaning that you will provide this service or you will provide this program and you will fund it to this amount. The other type is a program mandate with discretionary funding. And that's obviously, you will provide this service, but we will leave it to the local elected body to decide on the adequacy of the funding level. And An example of that, of course, is the school system, the community college, things of that nature. And then 19% of the total budget falls into that truly discretionary spending. And that is your parks and recreation, your library, human resources, finance, things of that nature. They are critical to function as an organization, but statutorily speaking, they are not mandated. Where do the dollars come from that Onslow County collects to provide these services? One thing that I would like to highlight is that a little over 64.5% of all of our revenues are comprised of two primary categories, that being sales tax and property tax. They comprise the two largest single sources of revenue for Onslow County. And that holds true across North Carolina. And currently, as the law is written, property tax rate is really the only one that a Board of Commissioners, municipal board has direct control over. Sales tax is at the discretion of the General Assembly. They did several years back allow local governments, primarily counties, to offer a referendum for a 1/4 cent sales tax. Since then, there have been no other sales tax options. Of course, there is on our agenda later for a resolution to be considered by the commissioners to petition for the possibility of a local bill being introduced specifically for Onslow County to give us or give the commissioners additional options in terms of considering revenue sources. How the money's spent. Just under 35% is tied to education. That is, of course, Onslow County Schools and Coastal Carolina Community College. Almost 80% of our total budget is tied up within three functions, that being educational, human services, and public safety, leaving just over 20% for all of the other departments and outside funded agencies of Onslow County. Drilling down, revenue neutral budget plan. What you will notice is that between 4 years ago when we conducted a revaluation and where we are today, the individual property owners will notice a difference. One of three things: either their tax bill may go up, it may go down, or it may remain relatively the same regardless of the tax rate, just because of a function of the revaluation. But as you can see, the revaluation number did not change. So overall, there was no appreciable gain in the values when taken collectively. The alternative budget plan does incorporate the school system's request for capital acceleration. They have requested that the Dixon Elementary and the Catherine Lake schools be built simultaneously. It was in the plan to have one funded this year and one funded next year. And to be able to accomplish that request, it is right at a 3-penny tax rate increase necessary to accomplish that. Giving some perspective, when we started the budget process, the unedited total request came in just shy of $250 million. How that related to fiscal year 17-18, it was 17.2 million over. After we went through the review process with the individual department, offices, and agencies, the recommended budget that is before you today is actually $21.4 million less than the original unedited request. And how that stacks up against our current fiscal year, which is 17-18, it is $4.2 million under. And I want to emphasize that again. That's $4.2 million under 17-18. Now, I wish I could stand here and tell you that we could take credit for all of that. Part of that is a function of a state change in social services, the daycare subsidy that used to be funneled from the state to the counties and then to the daycare recipient is now more of a direct from the state to the subsidy recipient. So it's an accounting measure. The revenue and the expense of that has been taken out of our budget. So that is part of that. Now, when you really drill down and you look at general fund, just under 198 million, that $191,000 under our current fiscal year, we can take credit for. Just a graphical representation of how our expenditures have trended over the past several fiscal years. And drilling down into general fund by functional level. Between fiscal year 16 and 17 through recommended fiscal year 18-19, general government has seen a decrease of just under 19%. Public safety has seen an increase, which includes the sheriff's office, emergency management, and animal services, of just shy of 4%. Human services, which contains health, social services, senior services, has seen a just under 18.5% decrease. And again, a portion of that is due to the daycare subsidy being rerouted from the state to the recipient, and the counties are no longer serving as that clearinghouse. Over that same period of time, education has seen a 7.77% increase, as well as debt service seeing just under a 10% increase. And the increase for debt service really occurred between 16-17 to 17-18, and not really in 18-19 recommended. And what comprised that increase of roughly $1.4 million was the courthouse, the Richland Steed Park Elementary School, the Consolidated Human Services parking lot, Phase 2, and the Justice Complex HVAC systems being upgraded. So again, education, the school system, the funding formula has been satisfied. It required $2.37 million new dollars to satisfy the funding formula. And as that compares, to show you that, this is the funding formula over the past several years. So from fiscal year 16-17 to 17-18, there was a $2.55 million increase. From fiscal year 18 to fiscal year 19 recommended is trending at a $2.37 million increase. So between those two fiscal years, it's just under a $5 million increase. The recurring capital, the annual capital, is recommended to remain at the $3 million figure. We are looking at bringing on new schools, additional debt, if the commissioners decide to go that direction. So that factored partially into that recommendation, but not solely the governing factor. The Mental Health and Substance Abuse Crisis Intervention Center is currently under construction, and again, thanks to Senator Brown being able to secure the Dorothea Dix money for us, we were able to upfit that facility. We do have providers interested in being the healthcare services in the facility. So we anticipate still being on track and opening in this calendar year and standing up that much-needed service in Onslow County. In social services, and unfortunately directly related to the national opioid crisis, we are looking at recommending another social services, social worker in protective services, and it's directly related to foster care and the length of stay being intrinsically tied to the opioid epidemic. Veteran services, there is a recommendation for a veteran services technician, and again, that's a function of having more and more veterans decide to call Onslow County home, which I think is a great thing. So as the number of veterans goes up, certainly the number of service interactions are going up as well. So the veteran services technician would be able to take that workload off of our veteran services officers, freeing them up and allowing them to meet the needs of our veterans. Within public safety, emergency services, I do want to discuss what the recommendations are there. I am recommending 4 telecommunicators, whether someone calls for a law enforcement emergency, a fire emergency, or they need an ambulance. All of those calls originate at our E911 center. And based specifically and solely on the data and the statistics, it is trending to where they need another telecommunicator for the shifts and for those peaks. So I am recommending 4 telecommunicators within emergency services. Animal services, that came out of our original discussion at our goal-setting retreat, and that does reflect 3 animal control officers. Our volunteer fire and rescue personnel, they do a tremendous job for us. And nationally, what we're seeing is a paradigm shift with volunteerism. It's nothing unique to Onslow County. And there are several ways to address that. And one way is what is recommended here, is actually filling those gaps in service hours where the peak is when volunteers are not available. So there are a total of 6 first responders, 3 full-time, 1 part-time at 50%, and 2 part-time at 25%. And they would go to the individual fire rescue agency which is requested those positions. And that would follow the trend that we have established. We actually have 2 currently that have that second emergency responder on staff. As a continuation of the commissioner's push for transparency and responsiveness, the first thing that I would like to discuss are the measures that the commissioners have undertaken. Well, correction, the measures that the commissioners have directed staff to undertake. As part of the fiscal year 17-18 budget, one of the priorities that was identified was buying down the delinquent tax amount. And the commissioners directed staff to be more proactive, be aggressive, use every available resource within within the general statute. And staff has availed ourselves of that. Year to date, we are a full % above where we were measuring last year, and that equates to just over $1 million. We have had several folks who owed delinquent amounts in excess of $100,000 come in and pay, and that is due in large part to Harry Smith and his staff being shepherded by Ms. Sharon Russell, our Deputy County Manager, Mr. Brett DeSelms, helping with those measures and sending out the notices. We have taken on everything from garnishments to identifying employers in the community and working with them to get their employee rolls and matching that up with our tax rolls, and if there's a delinquency, asking for a garnishment or an attachment. We also looked internally. One thing when we started, I took a look and said, before we start going and collecting within the community, I want to make sure that our house is in order. So we adopted an internal policy which addressed current staff and anyone who may want to work for Onslow County. It is clearly stated now in policy and in our application that you will become current and or remain current if you want to apply to work for Onslow County. And if you are currently an employee, you will become current with any taxes, any fees that you owe within a set amount of time. And that goes for vendors and contractors who want to do business with the county. We now have a policy in place which states before we will even consider you for a contract, you will pay back any and all outstanding amounts. Now you may ask why it wasn't that in place before. It's something that we found, and rather than when should it have been adopted, why wasn't it, I can report to you now it is in place. We saw the gap, we filled the gap, we're moving forward. So that started with the guidance of the commissioners, and we are continuing with those measures. We are up to, and Miss Melissa Moore, our internal auditor, she has done a tremendous job of identifying the process, streamlining the process, working with our collection staff in making all of those pieces fit together and make it a more seamless process. We are up to, I want to say it, we're sending 1,000 folks to collections on a monthly basis now until we clear out, or maybe it's 100. Oh, I was a little ambitious. Staff's going, what? Correction. We are sending 100 each month until we have touched every delinquent taxpayer out there. That leads me to our strategic planning effort. Again, an initiative that started with the commissioners. And I want to say also, this is an internal process. Commissioners were insistent. We're going to do this, we want to do this, but we're going to also do this internally. And looking around the state, others who have taken on strategic planning efforts have spent upwards of over $200,000 engaging external consultants to bring that talent to them. We have that talent in-house. And again, this is something where we have tapped the knowledge, skills, I'll say talent again, and talent of our staff to start this process and bring it to where it is. We currently recently sent out the community surveys. We sent out internal employee surveys. Following getting all of those back, culling through them, and compiling the data, I'll ask for a workshop with the commissioners where hopefully we will set goals, a vision, a mission, and from that, for the overall organization, then each department will be able to build their own vision and mission, as well as goals and objectives which support that. And my ultimate goal is, regardless of job title, to have every single employee's performance review be tied to the strategic planning effort, showing that what you do, I can tell folks that, you know, they help move us forward, but actually putting it in writing and making it something measurable, that really drives that home, resonates, and I think that's where you will really see us take this organization to the next level. I think we have a talented staff, and we are really, not tooting our own horn, but we are really excelling in customer service, which leads me to the next point. Again, something that the commissioners said in 17, 18, and we're starting to move that forward, is the client customer service program. We will be rolling that out in the next 30 to 45 days. That consists of everything from training to really a new approach to how we interact and provide our client customer service. You know, everything from, you know, no wrong door, no wrong number, running the gamut. But for the people that we interact with, the clients that we provide services to day in and day out, we don't exist. And refocusing and driving that home is a cornerstone to this program. So I am really looking forward to reporting out great results once we get that underway. Information access and transparency, again, another initiative of this board. Not only was it information, you wanted to make information available to whoever wanted it without having to make a public records request. So we are currently evaluating how we can push, and it is metadata amounts of information out there, and all they have to do is, you know, from the comfort of their home, just search without ever having to make a public records request. Now, there will be some things that just will never be able to fit, you know, that square peg in that round hole. But hopefully that will be the exception rather than the rule. So last item. We are here at the public hearing. Could potentially have another workshop. The resonating point is that, of course, the budget adoption would need to occur on or before June 30th. For anyone who may be interested, the budget document is available in county administration, our main branch library, as well as online at the county's website. And with that, I'll transition back to my seat, Mr. Chair. Yes. Okay, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I will now open the public hearing. And the first person who has signed up, let me back up. On behalf of the Commissioners, citizens who have prepared written remarks or supporting documents are encouraged to leave a copy of such remarks and documents with the clerk to the board. Members of the public are proscribed from engaging in applause, hooting, hissing, or other loud exchanges. Members of the public are prohibited from bringing props or signs of any nature into the meeting chambers. This prohibition shall not apply to the use of illustrated props or signs by members of the public during comments, sessions, public hearings, or when requested to address the board by the presiding officer, so long as such props or signs remain covered until the speaker has reached the podium and are again placed under cover upon departure from the podium. So I will open the public hearing. The first speaker is Mr. Rick Sears of 1099 Gumbatch Road, Jacksonville. Mr. Sears.
Good evening. Nice to be here. My name is Rick Sears. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Brigade Boys and Girls Club. As you may know, we're the largest in the area in serving kids exclusively. Here in Onslow County, we serve over 1,000 kids. Roughly a third are black, 15% are Hispanic, almost 50% live below the poverty level, and almost 50% live in single-parent homes. I'm here to softly appeal the recommendation of the commissioners in the budget hearing. It was the recommendation of David Cotton initially that we be granted $30,000. That money is very dear to us. Commissioners, you need to know that every penny of our contributions that we get from the county goes to the kids here in the county. Every penny. The loss of $30,000 is dear to us. It's part of our budget, and I do sympathize with you all and what you're trying to do in balancing a budget. That $30,000 creates an issue with us because we have many families here in Onslow County that can't afford services. As an example, this summer, there are 47 kids that are coming to Brigade and Boys and Girls Club who otherwise can't afford it. They receive funding because we provide them a scholarship. And the monies from those scholarships come from either government grants or private funding. Now, I am aware of an article in the newspaper that mentioned that the funds that were recommended by the county manager were given instead to the YMCA. I'm very respectful of the YMCA. It's a terrific organization. I sought out Billy Sewell. You all know him. He's an outstanding community steward. I sought him out last fall to collaborate with him in the YMCA effort. It's outstanding, and it's going to be a real powerhouse, I think, someday when we can merge in helping the youth of Onslow County. But the $30,000 that you've granted him initially goes to an organization that yet isn't serving children, isn't yet active. So you're taking $30,000 to fund an organization for the future rather than $30,000 to provide services to the kids of Onslow County. Seems silly to me. So I'm respectfully requesting that you reconsider the movement of the funds from us to YMCA for this year and giving those funds to us to provide services to the kids of Onslow County. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the next person who has signed up is Willie Abril of 299 Ramsey Road. And I will apologize in advance if I mispronounce anyone's name.
Commissioners, good evening. Fellow taxpayers, good evening. My name is Willie Abril from 299 Ramsey Road. Raising taxes to pay for budgets, while seeming most effective way, has long-term consequences. And we, the taxpayers, have a very long memory. May 2012, Seattle, Washington did a head tax. They're going to tax businesses making $20 million, $275 for each employee. A month later, the same people that passed it repealed it. One reason. In Onslow County, we don't have businesses of that type, but we have taxpayers. Raising taxes, even by the small amount, has consequences. I've been here for 20 years, and my taxes have gone up. Across the USA, taxpayers are exhausted, carrying the burden of increased taxes every day. Do we want to cut teachers' pay? No. Do we want to increase child-to-teacher ratio? No. Do we want safe schools and a safe community? Of course we do. Everybody wants that. But what's the most and clear, concise thing that we, the taxpayers, want is accountability. We trust you, commissioners, with the responsibility and the obligation we have been giving you to care for our tax dollars. So what we're asking is for you guys is, have you really looked at the budgets? Have you opened up everything line for line and look at it? This Sunday was Father's Day. I had the opportunity to go to church. Tommy Snowden was a long friend of mine, and he was the preacher. He told the story of the prodigal son. Wonderful story. Maybe some of you have listened or heard of it. The one thing that I caught out of there is, as a father, I have a responsibility. I can't be naive that every mouth that asks me for something, I must give. The father, at the very beginning of the story, if he would have just said no to the younger son, would have solved many things. The man prior to me right now has a very good, clear, concise request. And I asked myself while he was speaking, what would have happened if that would have been a no? So I ask you tonight, the budget, as best as it's been put forth, do your concise, look at it. And maybe the hard answer is a no, but that's what we elected you guys is for. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Mr. Chairman, the next person who has signed up, John Michael Moore. Mr. Moore.
John Michael Moore, 113 Ash Street, Hubert, North Carolina. Gentlemen, I wouldn't want to have to be in any one of your shoes. I know every one of you, and I know every one of you are among the most honorable people I've ever known. You've been put in a very difficult spot for many reasons. And that spot didn't start this year or last year or even 5 years ago. The fact of the reality is our county is growing, and it's growing rapidly. And unfortunately, it's going to keep growing. It also is changing. Back when I first arrived back here many years ago, when Paul Buchanan's hair was all dark brown and I was a much younger man, we were mostly a rural community. I'm certain Jack Bright could remember all the tobacco fields and all the different farms that you would see everywhere, where now rows upon rows of houses stand. Our population has grown. Our population has changed. Jacksonville has dropped by roughly 1,500 to 2,000 people per year for the last 5 years. The county, on the other hand, has had huge surges in population that it's responsible for. The county has large areas to cover, and it's shaped like a big U, so it's not easy like in other counties just to take from one side to the other side and balance everything. And we also have the reality of realizing that, as was mentioned earlier by County Manager Cotton, volunteerism around this country has dropped, and frankly, I'm ashamed. Now, I know one thing. I know that there's not one of you up there that would want a tax increase because, frankly, you're all property owners too. I also know that we're faced with a unique reality. We have a burden that's placed on us. It's a huge burden that I personally feel was placed unfairly on the county, and that's the fact that we do have to cover the cost of this classroom decision made at the state level. We've all heard the term unfunded mandate, and this is an unfunded mandate, putting the pressure on you to cover that cost, putting the pressure on us, the citizens, to meet the bill, while still trying to preserve the services that have to be preserved. So I guess I'm throwing three things out tonight.
One, it's a very realistic possibility we may have to bite the bullet and face a property tax increase, which, though it is unsavory to all of us, it may be a necessity for a short time. As Jack Bright knows, we've had where taxes dropped in 2010 for a period of time, and they came back. So we have seen up and down before, but we have not attacked those we've elected to serve. I think everybody in this county realizes we have a problem that has to be solved. We have to work together. For those that are in the community at large, we have to step up as volunteers. We heard tonight that the Boys Brigade and Girls Brigade needs $30,000. I would like to see before the end of this month, on the public sector, from a volunteer effort, those funds being raised outside of the government to meet the need. And I think it can be done. Across the board, there are other ways we can do it. Stepping up to volunteer with our volunteer firehouses, our emergency rescue teams, those that have clubs and organizations across the county, visiting the services and finding out the equipment and things they need, and then setting up funds to help raise those funds to get those tools outside of a tax budget. And maybe, just maybe, if we come together as a community of volunteers and come back to the spirit I found in this county when I got here, we will not have to face these issues again in 2019. I thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the next person who has signed up is Mr. Rick Stout, 161 Colby Lane.
Chairman Bright and County Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity for me to be here tonight. As stated earlier by County Manager Cotton, we are a big portion of your budget. And I just want to say, that since I've been here since 14, the Onslow County Board of Education and the county commissioners have had a great relationship, probably one of the best relationships I've been involved in my 32 years in education. We all know it's a challenge for the county in general and the school system specifically to try to combat the growth that we have. Over the last 4 years and since 2004, we have grown to over 4,300 kids. With that challenge, the 17-18 population is now 26,433, making us the 11th largest school district in the state. I'm part of a group now that makes up of over 50% of the student population in our state. With that comes our challenges of increased square footage. We've increased 30% of that since 2004. Increased services for students. We're in a digital technology era as well with the curriculum changes that we have. A tremendous increase we're looking in security as we look at making our schools safer. And then in 14, when we did the joint resolution between the two boards, I know it's a challenge each and every year, and I know how much the increase was this year. But when you're looking at 300 to 400 students a year growth in 2 years, that's a new school that we're looking at. The facilities for public education has to be met by the county. We cannot generate any revenue, so we know that responsibility is for us to come and share the information that we have. The copies of the funding formula that we talk about so much and our budget that we submitted on May 15th is on our website, as well as I know it's on your county website for those who have talked about looking at what our line item budget is for the county, and they can obviously go to our website and find that. I also want to state, I know we've met jointly with the Board of Education and the county commissioners on November 1st, as well as January 19th, talking about the concerns of class size reduction that the state was giving us, as well as some of the growth needs that we have. One of the biggest challenges is trying to decide how fast should we build these two schools, knowing that inflation is going up rapidly. hoping that maybe the two schools built together, we could actually save the county money by completing the project before all the building materials skyrocketed. Finally, the agreement acknowledges the mutually held belief of both the Board of Education and the Board of Commissioners regarding the importance of strong public school system, a commitment to providing space for instruction. The importance there will be no surprise from year to year by acknowledging long-range planning and budgeting is in the best interest of both the board and the Board of Commissioners and the community as a whole. The biggest question and the choices to make, where do you want your schools? And I know our funding is at the state average within the state. It's not the very best, it's not the very worst, but it feels it's very adequate for what we have for the quality of education of what we're trying to do with the children in Onslow County. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the next person who has signed up is Jason Shoup, 412 Shamrock Drive, Jacksonville.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jason Shoup, 412 Shamrock Drive, Jacksonville. I'm here as a taxpayer of Onslow County, but I want to say that I'm against this tax. As a parent of a homeschooled child, I don't think that I should have to, where my home resides and I educate my child, have to pay extra taxes for the public schools. My daughter doesn't utilize the public schools for a majority of anything at all. We have our own facilities that we go to public and private institutions to do our homeschooling institutions. So with that being said, I really don't think that you should punish homeschool children, private school children for these taxes. The other part that I want to talk about is adding one social worker for the budget. We've been hearing for years and years and years about this opiate epidemic and all these children that are entering the foster care system because of all the drugs that their parents are doing and stuff like that. We are well below the state mandated number of social workers here in Onslow County. We need more social workers. I think it's ironic that we can hire 3 more animal control personnel, but we can only hire 1 more social worker to take care of the children here in Onslow County. We have a 65% turnover rate for the past 3 years. We need to hire a minimum of at least 10 more social workers so they have a smaller caseload. These social workers are not under the amount of stress that they are. I mean, we're pushing over 500 children in our foster care system just in this county alone. These social workers, it's traumatic cases. They need more help. And I think we should focus more on helping out the Department of Human Services and getting more social workers before something else happens. Let's take care of them. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the next person who has signed up is Mr. Dennis Burgard of 526 Rock Creek Drive, Jacksonville.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. My name is Dennis Burgard. I live at 526 Rock Creek Drive in Jacksonville. I came up here today not specifically about this budget. I've lived in Jacksonville now for 26 years. I'm looking more at what we have in just this county in general, and to remind everybody as commissioners that your job as commissioners is to be the foresight of this county, not the reactive folks to what the government requests. We live in a county where our government employees all throughout this county have a standard of living that exceeds most people who live in this county. I'm standing in a beautiful building, a building to me that I'm sure was necessary at some point, but I also realize there's a new jail, there's a new sheriff's department, there's a new building downtown for, I don't even know what that is for, but I do know there's a lot of new buildings that we seem to always find the money for to put into our county to make sure our county employees have a nice place to work. Then we're asked for tax raises when it comes time for a school. I don't think those two things aren't linked together. So I'd hope that our county commissioners would be taking their time to look in the future at what we do. We sit in a pretty much vacant industrial park. Part of what we need to do is realize this is not going to be the manufacturing capital of North Carolina ever. It's not located in a good spot. We have no deep ports. There's nothing here that's going to ever create that. Yet we spend money to try to create things that are going to somehow lure in these people to a place that they're not going to have the interest in doing business. So part of what I'm hoping for is that as county commissioners, we're going to first set a vision. What is it that this county can actually do? Who are they going to really attract? Are we going to bring manufacturing, or are we going to more likely bring retirees that are in our military who may want to stay, who may want to enjoy our coast or do different things like that? Yet we continue to build shell buildings and different things like that, I assume because we just have space to do so. The second is to make sure that any obstacles to whatever vision does come forth, what this county may look like, are addressed. Like I said, for example, we're looking at going towards manufacturing, and the first time I've ever heard of rail is just recently. That's really our only option if we're ever going to do that, because we don't have a port. I still don't think that would do it because of our location, but this is hopefully something you folks will think about. And also make sure we're thinking 30 years out. Said I moved here 26 years ago, and this beautiful park was sitting here vacant. I watched, and I know you have more to deal with in Jacksonville, North Carolina, but when I came here 26 years ago from Wilmington, the first thing I did was made a right turn on our river. And I looked at it, and I couldn't believe what it looked like on this beautiful river that we had flowing right up the center of Jacksonville with a highway over it so everybody in the world could see it. Although there have been improvements there, getting into this whole 30-year vision, a choice was made by commissioners to take and turn our downtown, which could have turned into something that would have been a bright spot for this county and also for the city. It turned into a government complex. It embarrasses me today that I drive across that bridge and I see a jail, I see a courthouse, and I see a sheriff's department and a police department instead of a place where people who live in this county can enjoy the waterfront that was blessed with this county, as opposed to folks who are down there because they've had some kind of problem with the law. So I hope we look 30 years in advance as we're making any decisions about what this is going to look for my kids. I've got a daughter now who's getting ready to graduate high school. I had hoped when I moved here that maybe she could enjoy something kind of nice downtown as a graduate when she was born here. And I'm embarrassed to say that that never happened because there was never any vision that would have allowed that to happen in the future. And then last, but and I wouldn't say but least, but is of course fiscal responsibility. Looking at the budget that was presented, it looks like the bulk of this is something you really can't control. We are dictated and mandated to do quite a bit here, but with the portion that you do have control of, quality of life I think is a huge issue. Like I said, our big problem is you have a lot of people who don't work for the government. Their quality of life is at a very low standard in this county because they don't have a government paycheck, and the jobs that are offered here aren't manufacturing, and unfortunately they never will be. Trying to do something to improve that overall level of income for folks who aren't with the government, I think should be a top priority. That makes the taxes more affordable. So if you're looking and you need a tax raise for the additional people showing up, people can actually afford to do that. A couple of things I have a question about as I looked, is I saw veteran services, that somehow the county maintains responsibility for veteran services. Although I appreciate the veterans, I know they're a big part of this community, I'm not really sure why that would be a county responsibility. It seems to me that may fall under federal, and I don't know if funds are available. I don't know where you go to maybe pursue that, but because a large group of veterans are living in this area and retire here, it seems to me that that should not be a burden on county taxpayers to do it. And finally, I would like to really encourage everybody to vote for the sales tax increase. I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, next person who has signed up is Jean Ennett from Sneads Ferry.
My name is Gene Ennett from Sneads Ferry, and tonight I want to talk about item number 5, the proposed 18-19 budget. But my purpose here tonight is actually twofold. First, I'm sure that everyone here, including me, is not in favor of raising county taxes, and neither are none of the 5 of you. However, apparently, for all services to continue as they have continued in the past, there's a need to raise taxes, or there must be budget cuts to ensure that we operate all as we have in the past. And unfortunately, that is the second of my twofold purpose, the possibility of budget cuts. Now, as you are well aware my entire life has been with the Highway Patrol or in law enforcement for 30 years. And at one point in time, the Highway Patrol bought into a program called Total Quality Management, which worked well for businesses that make a profit. Of course, the state and the county don't work on profit. They work on tax dollars. And I was totally against total quality management because it went against protecting lives and property. And my question to the patrol then, and my question to you tonight is, how much is a single human life worth? No one should equate a human life to a monetary sum or monetary value. Now, law enforcement is basically a proactive entity. However, at any given time, that proactive entity gives way to reactive. Now, you remember several months ago, there was 2 or 3 weeks where the sheriff's office was searching for a young girl that had been lost. And that reactive mode kicked in. And at that point in time, there was everyone wanted this child found. And I ask you tonight, how much money would you want to spend, or you want to spend, if it was your child lost? At what point in time would you want to tell the sheriff's department, hey, you got to call it off. We're spending too much money here. I think you see where I'm coming from. But in closing, I'd like to ask you to consider one thing. There are many avenues in county government if you are intending on cutting the budgets. And I'd like to ask you to consider decreasing the budget in another department rather than the lifeline of Onslow County, which is the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office is the office that you call when you need help. It's the office that you call for complaints. And I'm sure that somewhere in the salaries of some of the upper echelon of county employees, maybe there could be a cap on cost of living raises. Maybe there could be some other things cut besides cutting the budget of the Onslow County Sheriff's Office. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the next person who has signed up is Ms. Carol McIntyre of 114 Shell Island Road, Sneads Ferry.
Good evening. I'm Carol McIntyre, 114 Shell Island Road, Sneads Ferry. I want to tell you, gentlemen, how much I respect the job that you do. I know it's not an easy job, and I know that you've spent a lot of hours dwelling on this particular item, the budget. You get a lot of gruff from people who want just what they want because it affects them, or they don't want you to spend money on something because they don't use it. I'm a retiree. I've lived in this county for over 70 years. So I've seen a lot of changes have taken place. One thing I do hope that you will look at is quality of life. I don't have any children in the school system. I don't have any grandchildren in this school system, but I do think that you should fully fund the needs of our public schools. I think you should fully fund the needs of our parks and recreation. I think you should fully fund the needs of our libraries and keep the quality of life where it needs to be. If you have to raise my taxes, do so. I know that you won't do it lightly. I know that you will think of every decision that you have to make and do it because it affects you as well. Take care of our children, and let's all be more inclusive of all the needs of everyone in our community. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the last person who has signed up is Thomas Austin.
My name is Thomas Austin. I'm at 114 Carolina Drive, Jacksonville, North Carolina. And I'm here to talk to you about the budget and the funding of it. The situation is that y'all are talking about going up in the prices for the taxation. And yet at the same time, you've gone up on the evaluation of the homes in the area. Now, I may not be the brightest person in the world, but if you evaluate my home at one price at a certain rate of taxation, and then you go up on the rate of the valuation of the house at the same taxation, you're going to be pulling in more dollars without changing the amount of money or the amount of percentage that you're charging me for the taxation. There's a lot of people that have been up here and they've said, well, we need this, we need that, we want this, we want that. There's a big difference. Needs maybe need to be filled. Wants do not. So we need to go through these things and find out what is a want and what is a need. I went through, and everybody was speaking when I came in. Somebody was talking about how the school board was on, the funding was online, and anybody that wanted to could find it if they looked. I looked and looked and looked, and I couldn't find it. I spent better part of several days looking for this. Finally today, this afternoon, a friend of mine came up and posted, I'm hoping this is not the budget that I read, the one that they submitted, but they posted what they had, that they dug around and finally came up with it. That's one of the weirdest budgets I have ever seen. They have line item 361 listed on one page, athletics. Then they have line item 362, athletic equipment, listed 2 pages down in another department. Why? Is it so that you won't see that instead of costing 60, 70,000 or 600,000 or whatever it was, I don't recall, I left my notes, in one thing, it actually is costing you almost twice that amount because you have to look at 2 different areas? I'm hoping the rest of the county doesn't budget like that. I don't know. Also, I'd like to real quick, if I've got a moment, I do, bring up the different ways that you're asking for taxation. You have a choice here. You can go up on the property tax or you can go to the sales tax. One is extortion, the other one is a personal choice. If I own a home and I've worked, sweated, bled, and earned the money to pay for that home, that car, that motorcycle, whatever, and you come along and you say, we're going to tax you at so much money, or we're going to take your home, your car, your motorcycle. If the mafia did it, it'd be strong-arm robbery. Now, the sales tax is a different situation. And don't get me wrong, taxation is a necessary evil. But it's there. Now, sales tax is different. You got a choice. You can go buy that Ford, or you can go buy that Lincoln, or you can buy that Mercedes. And your taxes, if you're taxed at the same rate, is going to be increased. The amount of money that goes into the coffers of the county will be increased according to the cost of the item that you buy. You can decide, yes, I want to buy that cigarettes, or I want to buy that beer, and you're going to pay the tax on it. Or you can say, no, that taxation is putting it outside of my area. So a sales tax is a voluntary thing. Property tax is not. You can put a person out of their home. You could take away their mode of transportation. You could do a lot of damage with your property taxes. So as long as y'all charging property tax, whether it's here or anywhere else, I don't own my home. I don't own my car because I cannot own something that you can come and take away from me under threat of a gun by the sheriff's department. So before you go jacking up my property taxes, I request you think about that. And if you got to go up on taxes, if you can't go through the budget and find things that we want that we could get rid of, I would bring up that splash pad for one. It's nothing but a lawsuit and an impetigo epidemic waiting. Then maybe you better look at it at the sales tax, not the property tax. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, in keeping with our public hearing protocol, I will make one call to the audience if anyone would like to approach the podium. If you would, please state your name and address, please.
Melissa Oakley, 109 Knott's Court, Sneedsbury, North Carolina. Good evening, Board. I wanted to address the fact that we have set into the budget for 3 animal control officers and 1 animal control vehicle, but we only have set aside for 1 social worker. As someone previously said, we have a 65% turnover rate for our social workers in Onslow County. Being that I am a 4th District guardian ad litem, it is important to me that we have enough social workers because we work with them adamantly on a regular basis. In an article in 2017, JD News stated that there were, in 2016, 268 children in foster care, which was an increase from September 2015. This does not include the investigations where there were no removal of children from the home. In the same article, Ann Raymond, director of Onslow County Partnership for Children, said the increase was attributed from domestic violence, mental health issues, as well as the opioid crisis. Yet tonight, what we hear from you all is that it's solely the opioid crisis. If we blame the opioids as the issue, how can our county government, such as you gentlemen behind the bench here, neglect the opportunity to apply for a $1 million grant just here recently in the spring? That grant could have offset costs for us here in the county. Perhaps maybe we could have put that money into other areas, or we wouldn't have to have such an increase in taxes. So I just would like for you all to consider that the next time that we have opportunities to receive grant funding, please do so. And I also would like you to consider that our children might be just a little bit more important than animals. Have a good night.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
Good evening. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good evening. My name is Barbara Humphrey Garrett. I live off of Creedmoor Road in Jacksonville. Most of you know me personally. Some of you might know me from Facebook. And as you know, I'm not one to pull any punches. So gentlemen, buckle up. Shamefully, I've never been engrossly part of the governmental process other than faithfully voting and speaking out on social media. And I do like to speak out on social media. I've been active in my grandchildren's education, and until a few weeks ago, I thought that was enough. But then I realized that parents and grandparents and citizens like myself can no longer sit idly by and expect our elected officials to take care of the people who have duly elected them and look out for our best interest. I think every person here tonight fully understands that for decades now, the government of Onslow County has been peeing down our backs and telling us it was raining. That stops now in this room, because we're awake and we are aware. The budget, by law, must be passed by June 30th. I'm fully aware that there isn't a lot we can really do here tonight, because I'm pretty sure that all but one of you have already made up your mind about how you're going to vote for taxes, which means all but one of you are refusing to live up to your campaign promises. This morning, there was a coffee gathering by one of the commissioners, and that, as to my knowledge, other than some Facebook posts, is about the extent of how the board has involved the people in the tax rate process. Where were the town meetings? Where were the live Facebook chats, like when you were campaigning, to get the people more involved? Gentlemen, if this is your idea of transparency, then some of you need to clean off your glasses, because from this side of the podium, it looks mighty muddy. But hear me now. There are several citizens who have already started the Onslow County Taxpayers Association. Paperwork is now being prepared to form a PAC. We're not going to let spending go unchecked any longer. Gone are the days where the wish list will override the needs list. But more than that, we're going to help you, the elected officials, fight the strong-arm tactics of the Board of Education. I understand that in many ways your hands are tied, and I have a respect for the job that you are trying to do. So please do not take these words meaning that I do not respect you. But it has to change. I implore every person in this room tonight to continue to allow the voices to be heard as they have been on social media the past few days. Don't go home tonight, become complacent, because if we do, we're going to find ourselves right back here in the same room having this very same conversation, because sooner or later, the Board of Education is going to hold out their greedy hands once more, demanding taxpayer empty our pocket and pay because they because they refuse to make cuts and live within a budget. I do feel for you, like I said, but I also feel like in some ways you are kowtowing down to the Board of Education and once again raising our taxes for the sake of children. I would like to ask a few of those who have served before, when you decided to vote to build these fancy new government buildings, were they done for the sake of the children, or were they done to fill egos because money was no object? Did anyone stop to say, and maybe we should hold off on some of these expensive loans to build these shiny new buildings because the country is growing at exorbitant rates and, we might just need new schools? Nope, you didn't. You borrowed and you borrowed and you borrowed. And once again, the homeowners are now paying for it. So I think at the least we can expect is more transparency and more accountability, and we will demand this. If the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, can work tirelessly to hold true to campaign promises that he made to America, then by God, so can you. The Onslow County Taxpayers Association PAC will make sure that you do, or maybe we will make sure that your seats are filled with someone who can. Thank you, gentlemen.
My name is Eric Rudka. I live in Shetland Farms over by Meadowview. And first off, as you can see, I'm a lot younger than most people in this room. I'm still in our high school, going to Southwest High School. I'm currently a senior, and I want to press that education, I firmly believe, is our future as Onslow County. If we focus and give the schools what we need to succeed, because as we've said before tonight, we are a military town. We are growing exponentially fast. I've got a lot of friends that are teachers that I've had, or just again, family friends, and they're overwhelmed with the amount of workload they have to do and the amount of kids they have to contain in their classrooms. And so I understand that necessities they have to spread apart and create more teachers for the fewer kids so they can separate the classrooms together. And I want to press that we need to fully fund the schools in that. Because education is our future, if you look at it as like that, people, when they go to school, that's the first 13 years of your life when you start to really, truly comprehend. So if you're going to school in Onslow County, you're getting the head. It's like, if you go to a bad school, I don't like it here. I want to get out of this. But if you like it at the school, you'll start with that mentality, hey, this is a good place. And so you want to stay here. And once they get that education, they'll want to stay here and continue to build towards Onslow County and the bettering of it. And then when people stay here and they get their education and they want to continue to better it, you don't know what their certain career path is and how they can bring new potential into the future. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, some kid's education that they got in Onslow County, and it was good, could lead to a whole new avenue that we may not see here today. And finally, with continuation of good schools and the resources being there to help every child succeed in those schools, we can keep people off the streets doing crimes by helping them at that school level. From there, we can help stop with people going to the prisons, helping take away from the federal spending that's going towards the people in the prison, towards the public safety, and then spend those else on other federal deficits. So yeah, I just implore, I hope you can look at the budget again, and hopefully you can find room for the schools. Thank you.
My name is Dee Dee Dobby, and I live at 580 Old 30 Road in Jacksonville. I didn't come here prepared to speak. I've been taking notes the whole time back here. So Barbara and Tom and Dennis pretty much summed up exactly how I feel. But I would like to say that, going through my notes, there's one commissioner up there, one commissioner, that has had the integrity to publicly admit that the budget didn't get the scrutiny that he could or probably should have given to it. And I'm willing to bet not one of you did. And I know all of you, and I really like you guys, and I respect the job you do. But I am willing to bet that not one of you gave that budget the scrutiny that it needed, because it's our money, so why would you? Both the chairman and the vice chair stated publicly that the board did not and does not go over the Board of Education's line-by-line budget. They are given what amounts to a summary, and based on an agreed-upon formula, at the risk of being sued, they block approve the budget. Who does that? Who blindly approves a $200+ million budget, a $250,000 budget, without going over it line by line? That's really irresponsible. I mean, there's a line item in there, 061, classroom material, instructional supplies, and equipment. It started out with $809,000 in it. The expenditures out of it were $2,049,000 plus. And the teachers are taking money out of their pockets, and they're saying they maybe got $100, $150 to spend. What happened to that money? Why are we not scrutinizing this? Unless you've ever put your name on the front of a check, I think you think that money grows on trees and that we're the trees. But it doesn't work like that. We just got revaled. My house went up 19%. That's a tax. And now, as a property owner, you're getting ready to slap me and everybody else in here with another tax. What business owner would want to come here when the taxes are so high? Royce, what are you going to do? You're going to have to show your clients properties in neighboring counties because the taxes are too high here. And you're going to have to say, sorry, I'm going to have to find you a place in another county because I'm responsible for the reason the taxes are so high here, because you plan on voting for it. Robin Knapp, I'm going to tell you right now that I admire you and I appreciate you for coming out and saying that you were not going to vote for this property tax. I appreciate it very much, and I'm sure everybody else does. Everybody knows how you feel. Jack, I'm really surprised about you because you got reelected because you never voted for a tax hike. And now you're going to vote for a tax hike. I agree with Barbara. None of you, except for one, is living up to your campaign promises. And that's a shame. I just think that you all need to have another workshop, roll up your sleeves, get that board that's sitting in the row in front of me to roll up their sleeves and sit them in front of you and get about 5 of the best businessmen in this county, and all of you sit around a round table and you say, no, Tucker, you can't have ice cream tonight because it's expensive and we can't afford it. No, Mark, you can't go on a golf vacation because we can't afford it. No, Mr. Stout, you can't have 2 schools this year because we can only afford 1. Sometimes you have to do the hard thing because that's what we elected you to do, and you have to say no. You have to be better stewards of our money. You need to say no. You need to go back to the workshop and try again because there are places where you can cut. Thank you.
I will now close the public hearing. The item is available for commissioner discussion and consideration.
The 2.55 cent increase rather than the 3 cent, 2.55, which will address the debt service.
We have a motion to accept the budget with a 2.55 cent tax increase. Don't hear a second. Do we have-
We're going to have discussion on this, correct?
Not
You made a
without a
motion,
second.
you have to go through the motion, and then you can discuss his motion.
Not without a second.
There's no second.
With no second, the motion will die. I'd like to take a 15-minute recess, and then we'll come back and discuss it some more. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. We were on item 5, the budget, and motions would be in order now.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adopt the budget as proposed with a 3-cent property tax increase.
I'll second that motion. I'll open the floor up for discussion.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss that. I want everybody here to know that I've heard your concerns today. I've heard them for the last couple of weeks on Facebook, and people who have called me on the telephone, and people who have sent me messages, and people who came to see me this morning. I feel your pain. I am a homeowner. I pay property taxes. The increase in my commercial property is going to be painful. I don't like it. My expenses have gone up every year, just like yours have. The gasoline prices go up for me, they go up for you, and they go up for Onslow County. But I can't look at what my personal situation is. I think that you have elected me to look at the big picture and to make hard decisions. And believe me, this is a hard decision for me. I would love to live in a fantasy world where I could count on anger and hopes and dreams. The unfunded mandates, the state, federal government forces us to do, they make me angry. I can hope that maybe we'll get a sales tax that'll relieve the property tax burden on some of our citizens. I can dream that maybe we get more huge grants that'll help with our operating expenses. But I can't vote on a budget in good conscience based on anger and hopes and dreams. We have to pass a budget, and we have 2 weeks to do it. Our manager, we and our manager and our staff have worked for 6 months to bring here tonight the very best budget that we possibly can. The manager and the staff have gone over the line after line in this budget. It's not perfect, but it funds the capital needs of our school system, needs that the county's been planning for 5 years. It's not something new. It's something that we knew was going to be here, that was coming. It maintains the funding formula to provide for the current operating expenses of our schools. If you don't like the school budget, the school has a budget hearing every year about their budget. The school board is an elected body. We don't control the school board. I was at the school board's public hearing on their budget. 0 people spoke about the budget for the school board.
And only one other person besides myself was even in the room for the public hearing for the school board budget. We've done this budget to maintain the services that are demanded by our citizens. There are things that I don't like in this budget. I don't like the tax increase. I don't like the way the funding formula kind of ties our hands when we're preparing our budget. But those are things that we have to work on later because we can't do it in the next 2 weeks. When I look at the big picture, what our community really needs, I think of three things. I've heard people tonight talk about my business. Well, in my business, I talk to a lot of people who are coming here from other places around the country. They want to buy houses. They ask me three things, generally. The first thing that they ask me is, how are the schools? Parents don't want their kids to ride a bus for 2 hours so they can go to school in a trailer out in the backyard. We have got to fund the capital needs of the schools. And we provided a supplement for our teachers to try to attract the best teachers we possibly can to Onslow County. Economic developers and businesses don't want to locate in a county with inferior schools. So we've done the very best we can to fund our schools at the level that they need this year. The second thing that they asked me about is the property taxes. And when I tell people that on the average 3-bedroom home, their property taxes are going to be $85 a year or less, but most of the time they laugh at me and they say, we were paying 10 times that much where we're coming from. Our property taxes are low. We're 49th from the bottom, so we're pretty close to in the middle in the state of North Carolina in our property tax rate. I hate to see property taxes go up, but we don't have a horrible property tax. The third thing that they asked me is about quality of life. Now, that's been mentioned here tonight too. And quality of life is the 20% of the budget that we actually have some control over, the discretionary part of our budget, how we fund our fire departments and rescue squads, paramedics, the sheriff, the mental health facility, funding for our parks and libraries and museums. That have been mentioned tonight too. And just to put it in a little bit of perspective, the 3-cent property tax funds all of the budget for our parks and recreation, museums, and libraries. So if you really want to cut out 3 cents in property taxes, we can cut our parks and recreations department, we can cut our libraries, and we can cut out our museums, and that'll save the money that 3 cents on the tax rate raises. I don't think we want to do that. I know I don't. The bottom line is that we've implemented a program to reward our employees to make cost-saving suggestions. We've cut all we can from our local departments while still providing the services that our citizens demand. We've implemented a new collection program to collect delinquent taxes by all legal means possible. And we've asked our legislature to give us alternative funding sources in the form of a sales tax that maybe relieves some of that pressure from our property owners. And we've applied for and received millions of dollars in grants to help fund our county. So I don't know anything else we can do. I've said for weeks now, if anybody knows, if somebody can show me what we can do, bring it on. My telephone's, as always, my number's out there. You can come see me. Show me what we can do. What do you want to cut out that's going to save us $4.3 million so we don't have to raise your property tax? And I haven't seen any viable alternatives. So as bad as I hate it, I'm going to vote in favor of this budget. And I'm going to vote in favor of that property tax increase.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I was prepared to go to the mat for a 2.55 increase because I believe it's essential. That is what was essential, was 2.55. Initially, we thought it was 3. Then Mr. Cotton emailed us and told it the bare essential we could get by with 2.55. And so I was prepared to go to the mat for that because there would be no discussion of a tax increase if we didn't face the need for 2 new elementary schools. Dixon Elementary School was built to house 760 students. It currently has in excess over 1,000. That's with 5th grade at Dixon Middle School. So I've been to Dixon Elementary. They got a great faculty there. They do a great job with those kids. I'm not saying they don't. They do. But there's kids scurrying everywhere. There is a village of temporary schoolrooms, of classrooms out there. And so I thought that 2.55 was essential. And I would vote for what is necessary, but I can't vote for anything in excess of what is necessary. But I would like to clear up a couple of items that I've had questions about from the public. I've been asked, what about the lottery? What about the North Carolina lottery, or as it's called, education lottery, which is the biggest oxymoron you ever heard of. There is no education lottery to the education lottery, really, unless you consider 30% of the overall proceeds go to education. Out of that amount, a small amount is reserved for construction. $1.4 million for Onslow County this year, if I remember correctly. So it's divided over not 100 counties, but 115, I think it was, LEAs, or 118, something like that, because some city schools have their own school system. That's why that's the case. So we get $1.4 million in construction from the lottery. Some Tier 1 schools get more. Those are low-wealth counties. I believe Jones County falls into that category of receiving some Tier 1 funds, but we're not eligible for that. Onslow County Schools is growing by, as we said, over 300 a year, which is a school every 2 years. So that is significant. One thing I do want to clear up as well is that this board of commissioners cannot impose an increase in the sales tax. We can't authorize the sales tax to be placed on the ballot even as a referendum, as Mr. Cotton shared with you. That can only be done by our state legislature. Our state legislature will not pass a bill in a short session to increase sales tax in a county unless the state delegation is united in support of that measure. Our delegation isn't united in support of a sales tax. So that means we're not going to get one in the short session. I support a sales tax increase, and I've spoken out in favor of it as a citizen before previous boards and during the campaign. I didn't pursue it during my term on the board based on assumptions I made. I should have listened to my football coach. He said, it's never good to assume. And he had a further explanation of that, but I'm not going to share that with you in this context. So I erred in assuming that it could not take place. That's on me. And I can assure you, if you want to blame me for that, you won't do it any more than I have. I also erred in not recognizing the stress that the funding formula could place on the Onslow County budget. We grew, as Mr. Cotton shared with you, $3.2 million. We grew in our property tax and the amount of money coming in by $3.2 million, but $2.4 million went to Onslow County Schools to meet the average per pupil expenditure to the state average. That is unsustainable. We cannot do that. And I recognize that now, and I think all the commissioners do. They can speak for themselves, though I don't want to speak for them, but I think they do. I was going to tell you that every cent of that 2.55 would be dedicated to debt service on construction of the 2 new elementary schools. It would not be used for additional spending. And so, I could have voted for 2.55, but I can't vote for anything that we absolutely do not have to have. Yes, that additional, people say, well, that's not much. Well, if I cared about what it's going to cost next year to build the schools, without an increase this year, which is going to lead to another additional increase of 0.25, another quarter cent. If I cared about a quarter cent, don't I care about 0.45? I've got to. So, that doesn't make sense to say, I care about 0.25, but I don't care about 0.45. So I can't support an additional increase on that basis to 3 cents, but I'm with you if we go 2.55.
There's not a whole lot that I can add, but I do concur with Royce Bennett, but there's a few things that need to be kind of took care of. And one of the things is the CIP program we put together, I want to say 6-8 years ago, I believe, that's where these buildings come from. We put money away so we could build these buildings. There has not been an office or what we call a complex for our employees or for the government, and I think I might get this right, in 300 years, something like that. We've never had our own office space. We've always rented space. You've already heard him mention the lottery. There's $100 million comes from the lottery for 100 counties. That's why we only get $1.4 million. It's divvied out to all the counties. The airport, there's no taxes involved in the airport. There's no taxes involved in the landfill. Both those are on their own. They take care of everything, and we've got a beautiful facility at that airport. The tower will be coming online, I think, sometime. I think we're going to dedicate it. I think I told Commissioner Bright, I think we'll dedicate that in August. I think they're telling us, but it won't be operational till probably December, I think what that timeline is. But I concur with Royce Bennett, and he said quite a bit, and so is Mr. Price. Thank you.
I've got a whole bunch of things that I want to address, so if I seem all over the chessboard, bear with me. First, though, I want to say thank you, a very heartfelt, sincere thank you to David Cotton, our county manager, Sharon, our deputy county manager, and our staff for going over that budget, going over it with a fine-tooth comb and doing what they felt was necessary in terms of making the cuts, et cetera. But one of the things that bothers me, and again, I want to thank all the commissioners here too, because no matter what we decide tonight, even if we don't agree with each other, we're still going to respect each other and continue business. But commissioners are not supposed to agree all the time. I am definitely not for a property tax increase. It's been from day one that I said that I am not for it. And I'm going to give you my rationale for it. I'm a homeowner, just like you. I'm a citizen. I ran on a platform of no taxation to do everything I could to lower the taxes. Do we need the money? Yes, we do. But do I think we've done enough? No, we haven't. Because this comes down to the state legislatures. And one of the things that I'm angry about is that we, as commissioners, are put in a bind. 81% of our funding is mandated by the state with no alternative revenue for funding. Does that sound fair to you? And 60% of the people are property owners in this county, thereabouts. Is it fair that 60% of the population pay the financial burden of the rest of the county and the other 39 to 40% don't? Not in my book. And the reason why I have a problem with it is because property tax is easy. It's easy revenue. So the question I have when I look at property tax, have I as a commissioner done due diligence? You know, a lot of people use the phrase fiscal conservative, and people don't even know what that means. I'm a fiscal conservative. Are you? I'll tell you what a fiscal conservative is. A fiscal conservative is one who does not spend. A fiscal conservative will look within his own budget and make cuts that are appropriate and make do with what they have. for the betterment of the rest of the group. That's what a fiscal conservative is. I spent 29 years in government service, 27 of those with NCIS, and during that time frame, we had almost 3 rifts where we basically reduced our forces, we cut back training, we even had to park our cars. And some of you out there know what I'm talking about. We survived, and we continued on with our job. In fact, we did a better job. It was a matter of reallocating our resources and to utilize what we had more appropriately. Property taxes, to me, is just a big no-no as far as I'm concerned. It's kind of a dichotomy to me because we have people here that have spent their life earnings to buy a house. They can barely make the mortgage payment in their current taxes. Okay? And then we raise their taxes. So we're almost penalizing those individuals for buying a house, which, when I was growing up in the 60s, was the American dream. Okay? I have a house. My daughter lives in a house. Her husband works hard. They can barely make the mortgage and their current tax rate. They're paying over $1,400 a year. That's big money to them. To some people, it's not. And who else are we hurting with the property tax increase? The small businesses. The businesses take a hit. If you think you pay a lot of property tax as a homeowner, talk to a business owner. Ask them what they're paying. So now we're penalizing them for having a business within our county, and then we raise the tax rate. Now, I heard mentioned that the tax rate, well, it's low here for the rest of the United States. Maybe so, but it's not low here for us. Okay, one man's $10 in his pockets is another man's $1,000. It's a matter of value. And I can't sit there and see how we can raise property taxes. Now, do we need the money, like I said before? Absolutely. But I think there's more that we can do. I don't like taxes, period. But the fairest way to do this is a sales tax. Because why should 60% of you have to pay the burden, as I said earlier? There are individuals within this county, okay, that pay rent. They may not own property. They use our facilities, our roads, our services. They even use our schools for some of those individuals who are residing aboard Camp Lejeune. They're not paying anything. Why is that? But yet they come into our town, our city, our county, and utilize our services. To me, I have to vote my conscience. I have to vote for what I feel you voted for me to do. Now, Mr. Bennett has his convictions, and I respect him for that. But I also have mine. And my convictions are I am totally against property tax. I'm totally against any type of taxes. And the other thing is, when I said in the paper not too long ago that we're held hostage by our own budget, I was absolutely correct about that. I feel that I'm held hostage as a commissioner by not only our own budget, but our mandates. Why don't you give us the extra revenue stream? Why don't you find a way to help us? You're demanding so much on the commissioners because we have to reduce the classroom size, which requires additional construction, and you want me to pay for it. You want me to pay for it for this dollar bill, and it's not going to work. So we're left holding the bag as commissioners. And for one, I'm tired of that. I am totally tired of that. I'm tired of being a board of commissioner. And some of you out there that are sitting there now, they're going to feel this pain if you get elected in November, you'll understand where I'm coming from. But why is it that everything is laid at the commissioner's feet? Why aren't we standing up as commissioners? Now, I've heard that there's nothing that can be done. Maybe not. But I sure in the world can rattle a bunch of cages and make phone calls and continue this fight. I can make my voice known because I'm one commissioner who does not like the mandates that are shoved down our throats without extra help. I'm one commissioner who does not like to be forced to do something that I do not want to do and I shouldn't have to do. Okay? $1 is worth 100 cents. They're trying to get 120 cents out of the dollar. That doesn't make any, I'm not a math whiz, believe it or not, okay? I'm pretty good at English, but math, no. But I know 120 is a lot different than 100. So when we sat down and did this process, we went over everything. And I want to address something tonight, too. I heard a bunch of people come up and talk about this thing, this club, or whatever. And I understand your passion, and I want to tell you, I appreciate everything that you said tonight. I listened intently. I took notes on my laptop, okay, because I wanted to address those things. But be careful when you start giving the impression that one department is more important than the other, okay? That's not the way it is. I'm a law enforcement guy. I'm pro-law enforcement, okay? And they need the resources to do their job. So does animal control. Okay? Those animals that are running around biting people, kids, officers in harm's way, trying to do their job, they need help too. And yes, I agree with you with the Department of Social Services. Absolutely agree with you. The last 3 years I worked sexual abuse cases, so I understand. This is a tough dilemma for all of us, but I can't, in my own conscience, my own principle, and I said this from the onset. So if anybody out there is listening and think this is a political rhetoric or political move, it's not. This is Robin Knapp speaking what I feel from the very onset. I do not believe in property taxes, and I think the burden should be shared across the board via sales tax. Period. Now, what if we don't pass this budget and we can't fund this or that? I think we can. I think we can buckle down and do some things. Now, will we have a sales or a property tax next year? Possibly. But it gives us a year to rattle the cages and do what we can to get a sales tax, to do what we can to get our legislatures to hear us. And I'll go on record and tell you this. The one legislature that I hear from all the time is Mr. Brown. He's come through for us, I can tell you that. That Dorothy Dix Foundation grant money was huge. And I'll thank him every chance I get for doing that for us, because to me, he didn't speak it, he showed that he cared for Onslow County. And that goes a long way. I've heard talk tonight too about, a lot of different things, and I'm not here to criticize you, I'm not here to make any remarks about that. You all have your feelings, and I'm very appreciative. Again, like I said earlier, I listened to everything you said, but I can't, in good conscience, as a citizen, a fellow citizen, I can't walk up to another citizen and say, I'm going to increase your property tax. I can't do it. Because that wouldn't be me. Because I don't believe in it. Okay? Does everybody understand where I'm coming from with this one? I know there are going to be some people saying, well, you're not seeing the whole picture, but I am seeing the whole picture because, like you, I'm a commissioner, but I'm a citizen first. I calculated my property tax based on 3 cents to $100. It'll go up $72 for me. Doesn't really seem like a lot of money, does it? But the $72 to me could be $250 for someone else. And when I think about my daughter struggling, going to school, getting a master's degree, and her husband working as a laborer, barely making their mortgage, and then their property taxes go up, when other people out there are not paying their fair share. This, one of the things I want to address too is there's been a lot of talk about the Board of Education. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about the BOE and their budget and all that. That's a different issue, and that's not what this is about. Okay? Do I believe the funding formula that we currently have needs to be re-examined? Absolutely. And that's going to be one of my main top priorities after this meeting this year, is to sit down and discuss it with my fellow commissioners to re-examine the funding formula. And hopefully some legislation will be passed here soon that will take the burden or the yoke off of us in terms of any possible lawsuit as commissioners. That would help too, because I think the BOE and the BOC can work together like we have been, sort out the differences and move on and find a compromise or find a viable solution to adequately fund what we need to be funded. So to answer everyone's question, I guess I said it a million times, I am absolutely against this budget in terms of a property tax increase. If need be, I would recommend we go to a workshop and go back and re-examine some things. but I can't in all good conscience vote for this budget. Thank you.
Hold your applause. This is a public hearing, not a arena for applause or booing or stuff like that. We just don't do that. Brett, I want to ask you, in the process of the school and the budget process, I know it's happened in some other counties about if the commissioners in a county was not able to provide the necessary funding, and that's not what we're talking about here. I just want to know what the track history is for counties that's had litigation if they didn't provide that. What happens for that, and who pays for it?
Well, Chairman, today I looked up the reported cases from the Court of Appeals from 2009 forward. In each case, the school board has prevailed at the trial level. That's occurred in Beaufort County, Duplin County, and Union County. Union County being the most recent in 2015. And the case was actually remanded back to the trial court after the Court of Appeals heard it, but it was like an $80 million verdict at that time. So it hasn't fared well for the schools. I mean, for the county. It's always fared well from the schools since 2009, the reported cases. But the process, basically, if you don't come to an agreement, you have to have a mediation or joint meeting first, then a mediation, and then the lawsuit is expedited. It occurs at the next term. Of course, we're the people that fund the school system as well. So at the end of the day, you're going to end up eating their attorney fees as well as your own. Because they're going to have to be funded as well. So it is a lose-lose situation if you have to get to that point. And I think that obviously if an agreement can be reached between the parties, it's always a lot better than the litigation.
Who pays for the mediation and the attorney fees?
It's supposed to be split between the parties, but since you fund the Board of Education, at the end of the day, it's going to come out of your pocket. So if mediation and agreement can't be made, I'm understanding you to say that it always comes back to the county because the county funds the school, and then the school they use that same money if they have to hire an attorneys or counsel or mediators. So it always comes back to the commissioners and adds to the cost. What's the approximate cost of mediation and But the mediation wouldn't be terribly expensive, but a trial, I mean, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars per side.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate that. I want to clear up one thing that was made by one of the speakers. I can't remember who it was now, but it was said that I said that I would, in this last campaign, I wouldn't raise taxes. I never said that. I said I'd never voted for a tax increase before my whole entire life. I've been a commissioner for 11 years, and I've voted on 11 budgets, but I have never, ever voted for a property tax increase. But I have never said that there wouldn't come a day, and I said that in the campaign, that it might come a day that we have to do that because sometimes you come to a dead end like this, and this situation here is very painful for me. It's painful for these new commissioners that we have. They now in a situation where they've got 2 years into their term and they're faced with a situation where is basically unavoidable. We got to build those schools, and when you have over 26,000 students, we probably, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think about number 12 in the state for population of students. And the reason being is we have such a young population of age of families starting their families, and there's more births here, and that puts more burden on the school. And when you got 300 plus students per year, it really outpaces the revenue stream. So we got a need for it, but their revenue stream is not keeping up with the expenditures. So that's what I needed to say, and that's what everybody else has said, that everybody has had their say, and I appreciate everybody that came tonight and spoke. I take value in all of you taking part of this public hearing and coming up and speaking your mind. I heard a lot of different versions tonight from different people that spoke about how they felt about the tax increase. Nobody likes it, but sometimes it's inevitable. And I think the next item on the agenda, which we'll talk about in a minute or two, is asking for a referendum for a sales tax that we send into our local delegation. If we were to get that revenue stream with the sales tax, I would be in 100% support of reducing the property tax by a substantial amount to offset that. And I think the other commissioners would be willing to talk about that too. I've talked to the chairman of the school board, and they in agreement with me, the ones that I have talked to, that we need to revisit the funding formula to see what can be done to tweak that and address that, because the rate of growth for that need is surely outpacing our growth for the revenue coming in. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cotton, you reduced our budget by $800 and some thousand from last year. So if you take $1 million out of our budget that we had last year and reduce it, but of course now our budget is more because of the funding formula and the debt service for the new schools. It's a bigger budget, but the bigger budget is driven by the education. So it's not that we haven't cut. The sheriff needs more people, and Lisa needs more people over in the courthouse, Lisa Brown. The judges that we're going to get to fill those courtroom spaces by the end of first part of next year, we're going to have to address that, because we're going to need more bailiffs in the new jail, because we got such a caseload. We're trying to keep the population of the jail down to reduce spending even more. When it's, I think, to house an inmate costs a considerable amount per inmate, and it takes money, it takes revenue. And I heard another speaker say that he or she don't like taxes, but we need to hire 10 social service workers. That's about $800,000 additional money there. And somebody else needed $30,000 for Boys and Girls Club, which we had reduced earlier. But we didn't really take the money from one and give it to another. We reduced that whole budget and divvied it up with what we had, that we could divide the money up with some projects that we thought needed to be funded. It's not that we might not fund that agency again. That might be that we have to do it next year. So with that being said, any further? We have a motion and a second. I'd like to have the commissioners show their hands for voting so the clerk can get an accurate reading of who voted for what. So all in favor of the motion that's on the table, signify by raising your hand. All opposed? We have 3-2, the motion carries. Okay, we'll move on now to sales tax resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I will read it into the record. State of North Carolina, County of Onslow. Resolution 18 Tax 007, seeking approval for an additional 1/4 cent county sales and use tax. Whereas the Onslow County Board of Commissioners recognizes that service responsibilities and demands associated with the county's continued growth have increased at a rate that is outpacing the county's revenues. And whereas changes in state and federal mandates requiring additional services provided by the county have continued to increase, and whereas the increased mandates have not been accompanied by funding, which has resulted in additional financial stress to the county, and whereas the current property tax rate in Onslow County is 67.5 cents per $100 valuation, but due to federal and state-owned properties, including Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune, New River Air Station, and Huffman Forest, 42% of Onslow County's land mass is not taxable. And whereas a disproportionate percentage of Onslow County residents own real property and pay ad valorem taxes as compared to the total population, and whereas the Onslow County Board of Commissioners believes it is necessary to pursue alternative revenue sources beyond the ad valorem tax, and that an additional quarter-cent sales and use tax is a fair and equitable alternative to increases in the ad valorem tax, and whereas a quarter-cent sales and use tax will more fairly tax a larger percentage of the population than ad valorem taxes, now therefore be it resolved that the Onslow County Board of Commissioners request the North Carolina General Assembly consider new legislation that would authorize Onslow County to levy an additional quarter-cent sales and use tax. Mr. Chairman, it is...
Second. A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it. Application for a public school building capital fund. I think that's our finance director, Mr. David McCall.
For you is the application for Public School Capital Fund. The funds that we are applying for are lottery funds or allocated by the state into Onslow County. The amount of the application is $338,837.60. We previously applied for lottery funds this fiscal year 17-18, in the amount of $1.307 million. That would bring us to the total amount that we applied for fiscal year 17-18 of $1.646 million, which we budgeted for this fiscal year. The funds will be allocated towards the debt service that has been incurred from past school construction projects. And with that said, I respectfully request the Board of Commissioners authorize the chairman to sign the application Public School Building Fund, Capital Fund, North Carolina Education Lottery on behalf of the county. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have on this topic.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. North Carolina Community Waste Reduction Grant, Ms. Lisa Ryder.
Good evening, Chairman, Vice Chairman, Commissioners. The Solid Waste Department submitted a grant application to the North Carolina Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Division of Environmental Assistance and Customer Service earlier this year. We recently received the grant contract and the approval letter for the project to be considered for approval. The purpose of this grant is to assist local governments with the implementation, expansion, and improvement of waste reduction and recycling programs in North Carolina. The Division of Environmental Assistance and Customer Service administers the Community Waste Reduction Grant program through the Solid Waste Management Outreach Program. The funding was requested to purchase a concrete pad for storing processed recyclable materials. And the current area has a gravel pad that needs constant maintenance and is susceptible to weather conditions, which makes it hard to keep the gravel out of the recycling materials. The total grant funded by the state is $15,000 with a county match of $10,000 from the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. The grant funding will be reimbursed fully once the project is complete, and the grant contract period is intended to align with the local government fiscal year and will have 1-year contract term. And we respectfully request the approval of the grant contract, the $10,000 match that will fully fund the project, and to authorize the chairman to execute all documents required for acceptance of the grant and sign the grant documents on behalf of the county.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second.
How much longer does the recycling program further the life of our landfill? By having a recycling program, how does it further the life of, is there a projection or a percentage or years or what?
It does significantly, and I apologize that I don't have that number off the top of my head. We've actually been waiting for some statistical data from the state that shows us how much we're reducing. But I can tell you that we have increased our recycling rate significantly over the past 10 years.
Okay, thank you.
That's pretty good.
Motion and second.
A motion, we got a motion?
You made a motion in a second already?
Any other discussion? Mark?
No, sir.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it, thank you. Contract with fire service with Maysville Fire EMS, Mr. Norm Bryson, our Emergency Management Director.
Good evening, Chairman, Vice Chair, Commissioners, and County Manager. On July the 1st, 2018, Belgrade Volunteer Fire Department and Loco Volunteer Fire Department will merge with Maysville Fire and EMS. The merger became necessary because neither Belgrade nor Loco Fire Department were able to certify their roster with the appropriate number of members with the North Carolina State Fire Marshal's Office earlier this year. The merger of the three stations into one organization will allow for fire protection to continue to be provided and Insurance Service Office, ISO ratings, to be improved for citizens. All three departments are private nonprofit organizations, and all three board of directors have voted to merge into one organization, which will be called Maysville Fire and EMS Incorporated. In order to continue to provide reduced insurance rates coverage and fire protection for its citizens in the current area served by Belgrade and Loco Fire Departments, a new contract is recommended between Onslow County and the newly consolidated Maysville Fire and EMS Incorporated. The Board of Commissioners is also asked to consider the new fire district map for this area, which is present. If approved by the Commissioners, the new district would be called the Coastal Fire District. The new district map has been approved by the State Fire Marshal's Office. It will cover all areas that are currently covered by Belgrade and Loco Fire Department. The new ISO rating for the district will be a Class 5 to all structures that are within 5 road miles of either station and a 9E to any structures that are between 5 and 6 road miles. This is an improvement for both Belgrade and Loco's districts. Currently, Loco is a 9S and Belgrade is a Class 6. The recommended contract is for 1 year and is for an amount of $180,000. It is respectfully requested the Board of Commissioners consider adoption of the new Coastal Fire District map by resolution and consider the fire service contract with Maysville Fire and EMS Incorporated for $180,000 and authorize the chairman to sign on behalf of the county.
Motion
Also,
to approve.
I have myself and members from Belgrade, Loco, and Maysville here to answer any questions.
Motion, you got a motion?
Mm-hmm.
Second.
I have got some questions and discussion here. The contract that we drew up, I read that contract. I think that's a good contract. Have we had conversation with Maysville and their organization to our contract agreement?
Yes, sir. During the last county commissioner meeting, I actually went out and met with Maysville's board of directors, and they went over that contract with them. They unanimously approved the contract that night. And for a few details, it is a 1-year contract. This is an opportunity for both Onslow County and the Maysville Fire Service to look and see if this is something that we want to do. Also in that contract, if this doesn't work out, then the assets for Belgrade and Loco, the buildings and the engines and trucks will be turned back over to the county so we can find another way to provide fire protection.
Well, that was a safety net that I thought we needed to put in that because once we had turned over the assets and then something, went wrong, then we would be out. And we had a lot of investment in those buildings through the years on both Belgrade and the fire department. So I thought we had a real vested interest in keeping that. Was that your concern?
No, I just wanted to thank them for merging. I mean, we've been through this in Bear Creek and the merger. We thank Maysville for doing this. I mean, to keep it at a 5, I mean, that's outstanding to have an ISO because, I mean, when we get into 10s and 9Es and stuff like that, the taxpayers, their insurance goes sky high. And we thank you for doing this merger. And thank you for your patience.
Is this the same money we were spending with the two fire departments?
It is a little bit less than what we were spending between the two of them. Looking with their line item budget, though, it is in line with what we've been providing in the past.
And it keeps insurance rates a little bit lower?
Yes, sir.
Okay, got a motion. We have a motion. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
A double take there on that.
Yeah.
Okay, home health and hospice, Miss Christine Kennett.
Good evening, Chairman, Vice Chairman, Commissioners, Manager. Onslow County Home Health and Hospice is required to provide physical, occupational, and speech therapy. Home Health and Hospice does not have a therapist on staff to provide these services. For the past several years, these therapies have been provided by multiple providers. Onslow County Home Health and Hospice solicited bids for this service in May of 2017, and Cornerstone Therapy Services, LLC was the lowest responsible bidder at that time. They've been providing excellent service, and county staff wishes to contract with Cornerstone Therapy Services, LLC to provide these therapies for program patients during fiscal year 18-19. Therapy services generate revenue and are essential to the operation of the agency. The funds used are reimbursable through Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance. It's respectfully requested that the board consider approval of the contract to Cornerstone Therapy and authorize the chairman of the board to execute the contract documents. The approval of this contract is contingent upon the adoption of the fiscal year 18-19 budget. And I'll be glad to.
Hey, let me say something real quick. I just want to say something about hospice because it's near and dear to my heart. My father passed in April, and he was under hospice care for the last 2 years of his life. And I can't think of a better organization that took care of my father. And it's been fantastic. And I think what you guys do is honorable. I mean, you're the real heroes. You're out there. You're caring for these individuals, that have either some type of disease or elderly, and you're providing the therapy. I think it's wonderful what you guys are doing. I just wanted you to know that, and I'm very appreciative.
Thank you, sir.
Is that a second?
That's a second.
Any
Another
other
service
discussion?
funded by property taxes.
Any others?
Another
Any other
service
discussion?
funded by property taxes, by the way.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay,
We already voted, Royce.
you have the next one also, Christine.
Yes, sir. This is a nutrition contract. This contract between Onslow County and Gibbs Management Services allows senior services to continue our congregate and home-delivered meals programs. The contract provides delivery of prepackaged food for home-delivered meals, as well as the meals for 5 congregate nutrition sites in Jacksonville, Richland, Sneads Ferry, Swansboro, and Belgrade. Clients are assessed on an annual basis for eligibility under the guidelines of the Division of Aging and Adult Services. Onslow County solicited bids for this service in August of 2017, and Gibbs Management Service was the lowest responsible bidder at that time. The contract was written to extend up to 4 additional one-year terms, and we've experienced excellent service from Gibbs Management Services Incorporated. Therefore, county staff recommends exercising a one-year extension for fiscal year 2018-19. This service is reimbursed through the Home and Community Care Block Grant. It's respectfully requested that the board consider approval of the contract to Gibbs Management Service and authorize the chairman of the board to execute the contract documents. The approval of the contract is contingent upon the adoption of the fiscal year 18-19 budget.
Motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Onslow United Transit System Transportation Contract. Crystal, that's yours too.
Yes, sir. This contract between Onslow County and Onslow United Transit System will facilitate transportation services to elderly clients age 60 and over. Clients are assessed for eligibility on an annual basis under the guidelines of the Division of Aging and Adult Services. Onslow United Transit System provides handicap-accessible transportation to medical appointments and to senior nutrition sites around the county. Services are reimbursable under the Home and Community Care Block Grant. It's respectfully requested that the board consider approval of the contract to Onslow United Transit System and authorize the chairman of the board to execute the contract documents. The approval of the contract is contingent upon the adoption of the fiscal year 18-19 budget.
Motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Department of Health and Human Services, County Memorandum of Understanding, our Assistant County Manager, Ms. Sherry Slater.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Hopefully we can get through this without too much excitement this evening. We have before us this evening, or before you, a new memorandum of understanding that the State Department of Health and Human Services is requiring all counties to enter into. This is similar, if you recall, to the agreement addendums that our county health department signs with the State Division of Health and Human Services. In 2017, the General Assembly passed a law requiring all counties to enter into an annual written agreement with the Department of Health and Human Services for all social service programs, excluding medical assistance, Medicaid. The law requires written agreements to be executed no later than July 1st of 2018. Drafts of the agreement were reviewed by the DSS Directors Association, the Association of County Commissioners, as well as the County Managers Association. The department has considered the input and comments from all of these and considered those in the final version of the agreement that you have before you tonight. Counties must select a person to whom the information and notices regarding this agreement should be sent. The agreement must be signed by the person the county designates as the signatory authority. The county attorney has reviewed this memorandum, and I'm available to answer any questions you might have. We would respectfully request that you authorize me as the Assistant County Manager for Consolidated Human Services to sign this agreement.
Motion.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Energy program outreach.
Thank you, sir. The other item I have before you is the Energy Programs Outreach Plan. Each year, the state requires the approval of the Onslow County Department of Social Services Energy Program Outreach Plan by the Board of Commissioners as you serve as our Consolidated Human Services Board. The plan allows the department to provide energy assistance through the Crisis Intervention Program, the Low Income Energy Assistance Program, to eligible citizens. The funds for these programs are provided by the state. There are no county dollars required, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about the plan that's attached.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
We had nothing for the consent agenda that was moved. So we got now item 8, public comment again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have individuals signed up. This is the second public comment period. In accordance with the board's adopted rules of procedure, commissioners shall reserve responses, if any, for the commissioner's comment period on the agenda. Comments may be on any issue upon which the Board of Commissioners has control. During the second public comment period, citizens can address the board for up to 5 minutes each. Okay. The first person who is signed up is Mr. Dan Witten, 207 Patrick Allen Lane.
Good evening, guys. Thank you for your hard work tonight. Before I get cranked up on the core of my comment, I want to just recognize there has been tonight a spotlight on the need for better collaboration between the state and local government, and I definitely see and appreciate that. So, state statute 122C 170 establishes the Consumer and Family Advisory Committees, and this is a part that, so every LME MCO, our area's Trillium, must have this function. They are made of adults and family members of those who use services for addiction, mental health, and IDD, so autism and stuff like that. We are a voice for families. We look at the gaps and the needs within the mental health and addiction and IDD services of our community, and we actually get a detailed list, a line item budget list of how Trillium uses our tax dollars for these services for addiction, mental health, and IDD. And I'm blessed to be on our area CFAC along with Jasmine, and y'all know Jasmine very well. And one of the things I wanted to share is because we are established by state statute, I want you guys to keep me and Jasmine in mind as the two CFAC members of this county in this area. If you have any questions or concerns regarding addiction, mental health, or IDD, that can be answered by myself or CVAC or Trillium. I want to just raise awareness of that with you guys and the community, and they are public meetings. That's the second Tuesday of each month at 5 or 6 p.m., usually either at Trillium here in Jacksonville or Wilmington Trillium. And parents and folks can come and ask questions and see what's going on. So I want to just share that with you guys. As such, y'all know that my big passion is addiction and mental health. So Trillium did release an RFP to school systems that do not have school-based mental health treatment and services. Onslow was one of those counties. This is at no cost to the school system because it comes through Medicaid and state dollars for addiction and mental health. And actually brings therapy and treatment into the school system. We have a lot of kids who are bringing, mom and dad's Xanax to school to share and to sell because that's whatever is going on with them. This is not just for mental health and suicide, it's also as a resource for those who are approaching the addiction challenge. And this also will work with both teachers on how to identify those kids who are at risk and the family members at home who might not have a support structure for those kids. So that's a fantastic opportunity for both our school system, as we have a little over 300 homeless kids in our school system that have been reported. So we look at ways to address the root causes of school violence. I think, that and bullying, that's a fantastic opportunity for us to be a tad bit more prevention focused than reactive focused. And as we can all see tonight, it does cost a lot more to react to situations in policymaking than it does to try to prevent them. So as we move forward with the Crisis Center, I'm here at the ready for your assistance. If y'all need any collaboration with CFAC, Trillium, the OCC, the Collaborative, and I just look forward to that continued community conversation about how we can make things better. We all have things to contribute, whether we're Democrat, Republican, neither. It's a matter of the intention of looking for those solutions and working together. So, and I agree, some sales taxes could be a better option than property taxes. I own a car, I rent, but I actually came from homelessness. So Robin, whenever you said $10 is worth $1,000, I definitely can appreciate that. That's why I'm so tight on my money. So thank you for what you guys do. And I want to just point out as a citizen that it's fantastic to have someone who's this kid's age to bless the halls of these county chambers. That never happens. I think I've been the youngest person at 32 to come in here almost. Wish I'm wrong. But thank you, sir, for being out here. Just a little shout out to the youth who want to be involved and to be engaged. That's how we prevent crime, poverty, and violence, is those root causes and working together. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the next person who has signed up is Mr. Thomas Austin of 114 Carolina Drive, Jacksonville.
My name is Thomas Austin. I live at 114 Carolina Drive, Jacksonville, North Carolina. And I'm not sure that y'all can help me with this, but you would know where to do and who to contact. This is a matter of safety, public safety. I'm sure that all of y'all have turned off of Piney Green Road onto Old 30. If you go up 100 yards, there is a shallow S turn there. It has almost zero reflection of safety warnings. It has zero barriers to keep anybody from driving off into a 6-foot ditch. There's been at least 5 car wrecks in there in the past year. This past Sunday, as I was going over to a friend's house, I drove up and somebody had driven. They start into the turn, and because there are no further reflectors, they straighten the car out, drive straight off the road and into a 6-foot ditch. This car looked like those cartoons where somebody tries to drive in between 2 buildings in an alley and gets stuck. It was perfectly level, but the top of the car was below the level of the road. If that had been full of water, they'd have drowned. I don't know how they got out, but the guy did get out. This, like I said, this has happened at least 5 times. If y'all can know, I know that the county does not post signs and everything, but I would appreciate it if somebody would get in touch with DOT and have them make some sort of situation out there to make that road a much safer area before somebody drops a school bus down in there. Thank you.
The last person who has signed up is Hans Miller.
Good evening, Board of Commissioners. I'll address the board as a whole. I would like to assure the board that the staff of the Onslow County Sheriff's Office have been working very hard with the county staff for our budget, and I want to assure you that needs not met, not wants, were being focused on. Our citizens have come to expect public service. They have come to expect reduced response times. We have done that by creating patrol zones, but it spreads our servicing population, our deputies out, and we want to continue to reduce the response times. This budget from the Onslow County Sheriff's Office was based on needs. Some expenses are not predictable, such as jail medical expenses. Medical services need to be protected because inmates have civil rights and the state requires us to provide medical services. Disasters, searches for victims, when we have individuals wandering off or being missing, that requires those services as well. But it's not predictable, so we cannot always predict our budget. We do the best we can. Overtime, a lot of times, is based on shortages of personnel. We have to call in people and pay them overtime because we have a shortage. Also, our reserve budgets. Our reserves are retired officers for the most part, and they are very beneficial to stay on our payroll because they don't have benefits. They're paid our hourly wage, which is actually beneficial to the county and to us who pay taxes, which all of us do. So I want to assure the Board of Commissioners that our budget request was based on needs and not wants. We look for any grants that may be available. We bring them in and we bring them to the board for approval. We do that to avoid fines. We do that to avoid lawsuits because we don't want anything like that to happen in Onslow County. Because as you are, I am also a very conservative taxpayer. At the end of the fiscal year, I want to assure you that if we have any money left, we will turn it back into the county. We will not go on a spending spree. And I saw that a lot in federal government at the end of the fiscal year. Spend that, otherwise you won't get it next year. I will hope that that would not be the case. If we have money left that we have not expended, it will go back to the people. Board of Commissioners, we have a good board. I hope that will continue, and I want to assure you that you have a good steward of taxpayer money and resources. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, that is the last person who has signed up.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on now to manager's comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I will be brief. I do want to say thank you to the Commissioners for the time that you not only put into the development of the plan, but the time that you put into constantly monitoring the budget throughout the fiscal year. And I also want to thank all the department, agency, and office directors, all the staff who were involved, my budget team, in the budget process. That does represent thousands and thousands of hours, and all of the outside funded agencies who presented, their requests and met all of our deadlines. So I do want to thank everyone that was involved.
Thank you. Commissioner comments. I think I'll start with Commissioner Bennett.
Well, I would again thank everybody who came and commented on the budget. This is one of the most difficult, it is the most difficult decision that I've had to make in my short time here. I just truly believe that in order for us to have a viable, good, viable county with a quality of life that makes people want to come here and live here, we have to have good schools. We have to have fire departments and ambulances that come when you call. We have to have hospice services and mental health facilities. And the only option we have to fund those things right now is property tax. And it's going to hurt me to pay those property taxes just like it does everybody else. But when I write the check, I'll know that I'm paying for services that our citizens need. And I thank the manager and the staff for the hard work that you put in to preparing this budget and making sure that we don't squander the taxpayers' money, that we spend every dime to the very best of our ability. I thank you for that. I think you did a great job. I did hear some comments about the Shell building that weren't made tonight, but have been made to me, and that just gives me an opportunity to remind people that the money that built the Shell building was not your taxpayer money, not your property tax money. It was money that came from the state economic, I don't remember, Commissioner Buchanan, you remember what they called it? Sorry?
Eastern Alliance.
Yeah, the Eastern Alliance several years ago. And Jacksonville Onslow Economic Development, I've actually contributed to that building. And as far as Jacksonville Onslow Economic Development is concerned, our economic development partnership is working tirelessly to try to bring new businesses and new industries into Onslow County. They have 12 projects that they're actually working on actively now, projects with businesses from every place from Australia to Canada and out of state who are interested in relocating here, and 5 prospects that are actually interested in the Shell building. And as a realtor, I understand that if you don't have inventory, people won't come to look. So as bad as we want to get that Shell building sold, the fact is, just the fact that it's there brings people into Onslow County who may relocate here, whether they go to the Shell building or they go someplace else. If they bring a new business or industry into Onslow County, it helps our tax base. So I appreciate everybody again being here, and I'll cut that off and stop. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bennett, Commissioner Price.
I'd like to first thank Mr. Cotton and his staff for all their efforts for answering all our questions in the lead up to this budget discussion here tonight and eventual, and all his guidance through the way there. I'd like to thank my fellow commissioners for expressing their opinions, and thankful that we can do so in such a way where we continue to be, guys that can get along with each other and still cooperate and get things done, even though we might disagree at times. Special thanks to all the speakers who were here tonight who showed an interest in being a part of the system. Just being here is a step above what the average person is doing. You're showing an interest in what's going on. You're expressing your opinions. We all have different opinions and different ideas. And I appreciate that from all the people that spoke at each of the in the public hearing and addressing the various issues. Also, congratulations to our graduates who just graduated from high school in Onslow County. And also, thank you to Sheriff Miller and his staff for showing us around the jail. I learned a lot. Appreciate it. I have a new appreciation for what those detention officers do, and thank you and your staff for your professionalism. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Buchanan.
David, thank you and the staff, and thank everybody for being here, and good night.
Commissioner Knapp.
Again, thank you, David and the staff. You guys did a fantastic job. Just one question. How old are you? Man, I was really impressed with you. I just wanted you to know that.
Here.
You walked in here and spoke like an adult. I wish more, I shouldn't say kids, I wish more young adults would be like you, man. And I'm glad that you showed up to show an interest. So I applaud you for that. Thank you all for attending. Rough night, but I echo one thing that Commissioner Price said. Regardless of how we may vote or how we feel about certain things, we're all still commissioners and we work together and we move on. So I appreciate all the commissioners that are sitting up here. I have tremendous respect for each and every one of them. So you all be safe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair. We voted on a budget tonight that was painful. It was painful for me, painful for the ones that made motions and didn't go through. But like Commissioner Price said, we're here all in it together. We may not agree, but we all agree to disagree sometimes. And we're here to get people's work done and do the best we can with what we got. We were dealt a hand that we had to play, and the only option we had was to do what we did tonight. We did approve a budget tonight that addressed education, which was paramount. It was a mandatory function. We passed a budget tonight that had $500,000 in crisis center money. We've never done that before. We've always given that money. We had, that money was going to the LME, the agency that handles Medicaid and the reimbursements for the state of North Carolina. So by due diligence and hard work, we convinced them to take that money and send it right back to Onslow County in the form of our crisis center. And with opioid abuse and the things that we got going, you don't just realize how much of a load that takes off of Onslow Memorial Hospital and our law enforcement agency, so they can get out there and do the work that they are trained to do instead of having to address issues that they're not experts in. Our employee compensation, our budget tonight, and addressed employee compensation that makes us competitive. If you're not competitive, you lose people. The sheriff gains people from other agencies because of the being competitive with our competitive rates. And when we get below that, then we end up becoming a training ground, and then we spend thousands and thousands of dollars on training just to send them somewhere down the road for, I have known them to leave for $5 more a week in pay. That happened to me, and it happened to when I was with the law enforcement agency I was with. We lost people when we gained people until we got competitive, and then it turned around. But a budget that was so complex tonight, we appreciate all the people that come and spoke. I know a lot of people that spoke are not here now, but we appreciate all of the ones of you that did come. That's what our government's all about. And David, I commend you for being transparent and continuing down that path to be more transparent. That's what it's all about. With that in mind, have a safe trip home, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.